I recently watched the new version of Macbeth at my local cinema. The film is directed by Justin Kurzel, an Australian who made such an impressive debut with the tense and haunting Snowtown. His Macbeth is no less tense and haunting. As I left the cinema, I thought back to previous film versions of Shakespeare's play, directed by Orson Welles, Akira Kurosawa and Roman Polanski, and wondered how each of them had tackled it. Shakespeare's play, first written and performed around 1600, is about the tragic folly of political ambition. The plot is simple enough. Freshly victorious from the battlefield, friends Macbeth and Banquo are told by three witches that although Macbeth will become King of Scotland, it is Banquo's heirs who will rule for generations to come. Macbeth and his wife, excited by the prospect, ensure the prophecy comes to pass. They kill King Duncan as he sleeps, blame it on his son Malcolm, and take control of the crown. Established in Dunsinane Castle, and wanting to hold on to power because he has no children, Macbeth arranges for the murder of Banquo and his son Fleance, while they are out riding, but Fleance escapes.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes.
Becoming increasingly unhinged, Macbeth visits the witches for reassurance, and they tell him that nobody born of woman shall harm him, and that he will remain undefeated until Great Birnam Wood comes to Dunsinane. When Macbeth is told that Macduff has escaped to England, Macbeth orders Macduff's castle seized and his wife and children killed. Out of grief and revenge, Macduff joins Malcolm's army as they march to Scotland to reclaim the throne. Lady Macbeth, driven mad by her deeds, kills herself. As Macbeth ponders the meaninglessness of life, Malcolm's forces approach camouflaged with the boughs of Birnam Wood. In the ensuing battle, Macbeth is killed by Macduff. He was born by caesarean section, hence not of woman born, and Malcolm becomes king. As for Fleance and the prophecy of Banquo's heirs, at the time of the play's first performances, the audience would have known that James I, King of England, who was also James VI, King of Scotland, was a descendant of Banquo. In 1936, Orson Welles was made the director of the Negro Theatre Project in New York. His wife Virginia came up with the idea of setting Macbeth in Haiti. The voodoo Macbeth was born, with drums, witch doctors, dancing, thunder and lightning. On the opening night, 10,000 people took to the streets of Harlem and stopped the traffic. The play ran 444 performances. Early in 1947, Orson Welles proposed a horror version of Macbeth to Republic Pictures. Republic were a small independent Hollywood studio known for their horse operas, westerns starring the likes of Roy Rogers, Gene Autry and John Wayne. However, they had also been trying to produce some quality films like the film noir Jealousy and Ben Hecht's Spectre of the Rose. So they agreed to give Welles a budget of $700,000. Welles rewrote his Voodoo Macbeth stage production and took his 9 principal actors to the Utah Centennial Festival in Salt Lake City. There he rehearsed the cast. To add authenticity, he had all the actors speak with a Scottish burr and did 6 performances in 4 days. The running time was 1 hour and 34 minutes, just right for a film. The festival allowed Welles to reuse the costumes and props for his film production. The influence of the Voodoo Macbeth can be seen, for example, at the beginning when the witches create a clay image of Macbeth. The shoot was very tight. They only had a 21-day schedule, 19 days principal photography and 2 days of inserts. So Welles decided to record the dialogue in advance. The idea was that with the pre-recorded tape playing, the actors would lip-sync while technicians could shout out orders and move cameras and equipment without having to stop for constant retakes. As ingenious as this sounded in theory, the reality proved otherwise. When filming began on the 23rd of June 1947, the cast and crew found it horrendously difficult to work with the pre-recorded voices blasting out of the loudspeaker. But the advantages were many. The soliloquies were performed as voiceovers, and the actors could respond to the words being spoken. They also made some extraordinary shots, like this 10-minute single take of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, played by Jeanette Nolan, killing King Duncan as he sleeps. The murder occurs off stage as per the play. One of Welles's major changes to the text was his compression of several minor characters into a holy man, played by Alan Napier. This gives the film a very distinct conflict, the pagan witches versus the Christian holy man. Wells shows this using visual motifs. The Christian crosses are borne by the English army, while the thorns on Macbeth's helmet and other designs within the castle echo the thorns of the staves held by the witches. The conflict is made explicit in the character of Macbeth, who chooses to have faith in the witches and make their words a reality. Macbeth even kills the holy man. Although Macbeth, the agent of paganism, is destroyed, the witches survive, and much evil has been wreaked upon the land. Filming ended July 17, 1947. Remarkably, Wells brought the film in under budget, but he then left for Italy to act in Black Magic. He returned to Hollywood in April 1948 to finish cutting Macbeth. Macbeth was released in some European cities in December 1948, but Republic wasn't happy with the Scottish burr, so they asked for the film to be redubbed into American English. At the same time, Wells had been asked to reduce the film to 80 minutes, which he did. The final version of Macbeth was released in September 1950. A 107-minute version of the film, with actors speaking in a Scots burr, was found in 1980 and is now widely available. This version is still shown in schools, a remarkable achievement for a film that is over 65 years old. Nine years later, acclaimed Japanese director Akira Kurosawa made a loose adaptation of the play. First, he relocated the story from 12th century Scotland to 16th century Japan, where there had been similar conflicts between clans jostling for power. He had already set his masterpiece Seven Samurai in this period, and would return to it for Hidden Fortress, believe it or not a major influence on Star Wars, and for Ran, a loose reworking of Shakespeare's King Lear. Kurosawa pared down the plot, removed many of the extraneous characters, and, being in Japanese, divested himself of Shakespeare's dialogue. However, what he lost in dialogue, he made up for in visual presentation and storytelling. In Japanese art, the surface of a thing is shown, almost coldly and without comment, to allow the viewer to contemplate what is going on inside the characters. Kurosawa filmed on Mount Fuji, making use of the black volcanic soil and the fog that often engulfed it. The castle, often translated as Cobweb Castle, is probably best translated as Spider's Web Castle, an allusion to the schemes and plots being weaved within it. The ghost story is a common staple of Japanese literature and films. Like Kenji Mizoguchi's Ugetsu, Kaidan, directed by Masaki Kobayashi, and Koroneko, directed by Kaneto Shindo, people's lives are forever changed when they encounter ghosts in the forest or bamboo grove. Likewise, we follow Washishu and Miki, the Macbeth and Banquo characters, as they are lost in the forest. They encounter a spirit who sings that men are just vain mortals, and that all pay their dues and fade to nothingness. After the spirit prophesies that Washishu will become master of Cobweb Castle, and later Miki's son will become the master, it disappears. Kurosawa had the leading actors, Toshiro Mifune as Lord Washishu and Isuzu Yamada as his scheming wife, play in the style of no theatre. In this version, it is the wife who is the real power behind the man. Washishu is simply a warrior without political ambition. She manipulates his fears to persuade him to kill his lord and his friend. In this shot, Lady Ashaji gives her husband the weapon to kill their lord. As she waits, she contemplates the room, which still has a traitor's blood stains on the walls. The servants cannot remove the stains, no matter how hard they try. These stylized performances, with the accompanying no music, the flute is dominant, seem strange at first, but soon become compelling. We are not watching Shakespeare's psychological play, hearing the interior workings of the characters. We are observing only the exteriors, where landscape, movement and music tell you all you need to know. There are two major points of divergence from the play. First, Lady Asagi becomes pregnant, which gives the couple hope that they will start their own bloodline. But the child is still born. And instead of dying at the hands of Macduff, Washishu is killed by his own men in a hail of arrows. They do not want to be killed by the superior forces advancing on the castle. In the end, the castle fades to nothingness, everybody having paid their dues. "14 years later, we have Roman Polanski's version, which he adapted in collaboration with the playwright and critic Kenneth Tynan. There is no attempt at a Scottish accent, and they do not race through the dialogue at an accelerated pace. Instead, the speech is performed and phrased naturally, and you can understand the full meaning and intent of Shakespeare's text. Polanski has always been totally committed to showing the unpleasant truth in his movies, and this is no exception. He adds many instances of casual violence to give a taste of the daily life of the characters. In the opening scene, in the aftermath of a battle, we see a soldier casually finishing off the wounded and emptying their pockets. We see hangings, the death of the Thane of Cawdor, and a bear baited and killed. As per Welles's version, the soliloquies are presented as Macbeth's thoughts in a voiceover. Macbeth is played by John Finch. We see Macbeth perform the bloody killing of Duncan and his grooms. A great many reviewers criticise Polanski for depicting so much horror and gore. In retrospect, I think that this makes Macbeth's later paranoia more understandable. After all, he could be the next king killed in his bed. Where Welles's Macbeth is driven to drink, and his outbursts are partially explained by his drunkenness, here Macbeth is more reflective, and his is a slow descent into madness. Of course, this was a favoured Polanski theme. The beautiful Catherine Deneuve had become unhinged in Repulsion, and Mia Farrow doubted her sanity in Rosemary's Baby. There are several stunning sequences of nightmares and visions, but one that stands out is his interpretation of the second visit to the witches. The supporting cast are given more to do in the background to flesh out their characters, and we better understand their reactions and motivations. In particular, the role of Ross, played by John Stride, is expanded far beyond the minor role in the play. He is an opportunist. First he tells King Duncan of the great deeds of Macbeth on the battlefield. Then he gives the news and the chain to Macbeth. Always hovering in the background near Macbeth, he decides to go to Scone to see Macbeth crowned, and is the first to hail Macbeth king. He situates himself as Macbeth's hatchet man. He monitors the murder of Banquo, and then dispatches the murderers. Later, he sets up the murder of Macduff's family, they are his cousins, by arranging for the door to be left open. One by one, the Thanes leave Macbeth. When Ross is overlooked for promotion to Thane of Cawdor, he switches his allegiance to Malcolm and to Macduff. Obviously, he does not tell of his part in the slaying of Macduff's family. In the end, Macbeth is abandoned by his men and fights alone. When he finally confronts Macduff, he defeats him but cannot bear to spill his blood as well as his family's. When Macbeth finds out that Macduff was untimely ripped from his mother's womb, instead of cowering or running away, Macbeth fights his fate, leaving the film as he entered it, as a warrior. With the death of Macbeth, Malcolm is proclaimed King of Scotland. Of course, it is Ross who hails him. In a departure from the text, the film ends with Donalbain, Malcolm's younger brother, visiting the witches. The implication being that Donalbain wishes to become king. Thus, the cycle of treachery and betrayal and violence continues. There have been many other film versions of the play. For example, in 1916, D.W. Griffith produced a version starring Sir Herbert Bourbon Tree and Constance Collier. Macbeth has often been produced on television, and some versions were also released in cinemas. Macbeth has been the basis for many other film adaptations, like the crime thrillers Joe Macbeth, Men of Respect and Magbool, and has even influenced TV series like House of Cards. Francis and Claire Underwood, giving off vibes from both Shakespeare's Macbeth and Richard III, manipulate and murder to achieve their political ambitions. The latest film version by Justin Kurzel is shot through with a sense of heightened cinematic reality. It has gritty, bloody battle scenes, gory deaths, and has a visceral demonic power to it. The text is stripped down, the story is told visually where possible, and almost exclusively from Macbeth's point of view, to the exclusion of the other characters. It has also added a few twists of its own to this ancient story. At the beginning we see the Macbeths, Michael Fassbender and Marian Cottilard, at the funeral of their child, and so the lack of an heir is more deeply felt when they eventually seize power. This grief also plays a major part in the death of Lady Macbeth. Before the opening battle, Macbeth and Banquo prepare the young boys for the brutal conflict to come. There is tenderness there. The boys die along with the many men, and Macbeth is haunted by this, positioning his later unhinged state as a consequence of his post-traumatic stress disorder. The film could almost be seen as a visualization of Macbeth's inner thoughts. It's a clever modern interpretation of Shakespeare's text. And at the end, after the death of Macbeth, Banquo's son Fleance appears and steals the king's sword, signifying that the cycle of violence has not finished, that the prophecy will be fulfilled, and that the lust for power will continue. No doubt, this is not the last film version of Macbeth. Whether the director is American, Japanese, Polish or Australian, it is clear that Shakespeare tapped into universal themes that continue to excite and intrigue modern audiences. I look forward to future versions, since each of them reveal and examine the eternal folly of misguided ambition and self-interest.